So you tell me what you need.
I need more fact for a story is what I need, and I think you should need the same thing.
Robert Redford's passing closed the chapter on a Hollywood legend, but the story didn't end there. For decades, speculations followed him and Dustin Hoffman, stories that no one ever fully addressed. Now, with Redford gone, Hoffman has stepped forward, and what he revealed has left the industry in disbelief. His words didn't just confirm the long-standing rumors, they painted a picture different from what anyone expected. Join us as we uncover the truth behind the relationship between the two movie stars. An alleged affair. The story of Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford has always caught people's attention. These two actors became linked together after they starred in the famous film All the President's Men in the 1970s. From that point, their friendship, their chemistry on screen, and the way they supported each other made people talk. Over the years, the closeness they showed to the world also created space for gossip. Some began to spread rumors about an alleged affair, making their bond even more mysterious to outsiders. The movie that brought them together was based on the Watergate scandal, and it demanded that both men spend long hours working closely. Hoffman played Carl Bernstein, while Redford played Bob Woodward. The way they matched each other's energy made the film a success. People watching them on screen noticed a natural flow between them. It felt less like acting and more like two people moving in rhythm. This powerful connection didn't fade even when the cameras stopped rolling. Hollywood at that time was a place full of speculation. When two men showed loyalty and warmth toward each other, people sometimes took it in ways that were more dramatic than real. With Hoffman and Redford, the closeness gave birth to different talks. Rumors started to grow that maybe their bond was not only about work and friendship. There were talks about an affair, though no proof ever came forward. In the world of celebrities, even the smallest hint could turn into a big story. What made the rumors stronger was the way both men spoke fondly of one another. Hoffman often praised Redford's looks and talent, while Redford admired Hoffman's skills and intensity. For fans and journalists, these words were easy to twist into something more. Whenever they appeared together, people watched their body language, searching for signs of something hidden. Even a small smile or a laugh could be turned into gossip. Despite all the talk, Hoffman and Redford never seemed bothered by it. They carried on with their friendship, showing that their connection was real, whether or not people chose to believe the stories. Their friendship became one of the rare examples of long-lasting ties in Hollywood, where many relationships faded away under the weight of fame and pressure. They stood by each other, and that loyalty sometimes made the rumors fade, sometimes made them grow stronger. What made their relationship stand out was balance. Redford had the image of a golden Hollywood star, with classic good looks and a natural charm that made audiences adore him. Hoffman, on the other hand, was known for his character-driven roles, his intensity, and his focus on depth rather than glamour. Together, they represented two very different sides of acting, yet when they came together, it worked perfectly. This contrast added to people's curiosity. People wondered how two men so different could become so close, and that curiosity often fed the stories about them. In interviews, they often joked around, teasing each other in ways that looked natural and affectionate. Their laughter seemed genuine, and the comfort they showed around one another only strengthened the idea of deep trust. For fans, it was refreshing to see such an open bond. For gossip columns, it was fuel to spark more rumors. The more comfortable they appeared, the more people talked about what might be going on behind the scenes. They showed loyalty, respect, and an ease that did not need explanation. Through the years, both men built huge careers. Redford went on to direct and act in more films, while Hoffman kept proving himself as one of the best actors of his generation. Yet, no matter how much time passed, their names were still linked together in people's minds. The shadow of the alleged affair never fully disappeared. Some saw it as Hollywood fantasy, others believed there was more to the story. What is clear is that their relationship carried something rare in the industry. Whether or not the rumors held truth, the bond itself was strong enough to stand through decades. Many friendships in Hollywood ended quickly when the spotlight dimmed, but Hoffman and Redford's connection managed to last. In later years, when they reunited for public events, the same warmth was still visible. The spark that audiences first saw in the 1970s had not gone away. Even in old age, their bond felt alive. For people watching, it was proof that their friendship had depth beyond the noise that once surrounded them. The alleged affair may never be confirmed or denied, But in many ways, that uncertainty is what kept the story alive. It became part of the legend of Hoffman and Redford. The truth mattered less than the feeling they gave to those who watched them. They represented partnership, chemistry, and trust in a business where those things were rare. In the end, their connection shaped how audiences remembered them. It was not just about one film or one moment in time, but about the strong influence two men left on each other's lives. Dustin Hoffman's reflection on Robert Redford. Dustin Hoffman carried positive memories of Robert Redford that shaped the way he spoke about him later in life. When the two men worked together on All the President's Men, it became more than just a film. For Hoffman, it turned into one of the most important partnerships of his career. He stepped into the role of Carl Bernstein while Redford took on Bob Woodward, and together they built a story that shook the world of cinema. Their work side by side showed how different acting styles could blend and lift each other up. Watching them join forces on screen left an unforgettable impression on audiences, and for Hoffman, it left a knowledge of Redford's strength as both an actor and a collaborator. What struck Hoffman most was how Redford brought a sense of real honesty into his work. The man that people saw on screen was not far from the man he was in real life. He projected a kind of decency that did not feel rehearsed or forced, and Hoffman admired how consistent that was. Over the years, he saw how Redford stayed true to that image, never trying to put on a mask for the world. It made their time together during the film feel authentic, almost like the script and real life were running in parallel. Hoffman carried that image with him for decades, and when he looked back on their partnership, he often thought about how rare it was to meet someone in the industry who truly matched their on-screen presence with who they were behind the scenes. There was also another part of their shared story that showed how paths in Hollywood can twist and turn. Long before Hoffman became the face of The Graduate, the role had nearly gone to Redford. Casting discussions had placed Redford in line for Benjamin Braddock, but director Mike Nichols decided against it. He felt Redford carried a pretty look, too polished to play a character weighed down by uncertainty and insecurity. Hoffman, with his more traditional look and approach, ended up stepping into the role instead. Hoffman never forgot how Redford handled himself during their time filming. Redford not only acted with precision but also carried the heavy responsibility of producing the film. He pushed to get the story made, showing determination and a sense of duty toward the truth behind the Watergate scandal. That balance left Hoffman impressed because it showed that Redford was more than just a leading man with good looks. He was someone willing to fight to bring a difficult story to the screen. Over time, Hoffman looked back and understood that Redford represented a type of actor rarely seen. Many stars built careers on image, but Redford built his on both image and substance. His charm drew people in, but his choices kept them engaged. Hoffman valued that blend and respected how Redford managed to sustain it through decades of change in the film industry. He carried himself without scandal, without the need to reinvent into something artificial. He grew into roles naturally, and Hoffman often reflected on how that approach mirrored his personality. Even when Hoffman described Redford with simple labels, like calling him the pretty boy among a group of leading men, it was never meant as a slight. It was a recognition of how Hollywood shaped different types of stars. Where Hoffman himself came across as difficult, Redford carried the image of the flawless golden figure. Yet behind that surface, Hoffman knew there was real depth. That was why he respected him so much. Redford did not rely only on looks. He put effort into the substance of every role he took. Hoffman had seen it firsthand, and it changed the way he spoke about him later. When the years passed and Hoffman reflected on Redford's life and career, he returned again and again to the sense of honesty that never sank. He thought about how rare it was to meet someone whose values seemed steady in both private and public life. He thought about how their work together stood out not only for its impact on audiences but also for the bond it created between two very different actors. He thought about how their careers had once been linked through a role, only to cross paths later in a way that defined an era of filmmaking. For Hoffman, Redford was not just another colleague or co-star. He was a figure who embodied a way of living and working that left an imprint. The admiration came through memories of hard work, integrity, and shared effort. When Hoffman spoke of him later, it was with the kind of reflection that only grows stronger with time. He remembered the experience of building something important together, and he held onto the image of a man who carried himself with steadiness and truth. Now let's take a look at the factors that influenced the man Robert Redford was. A passion for the arts, Charles Robert Redford Jr. came into the world on August 18, 1936, in Santa Monica, California. His family roots stretched across Ireland, Scotland, and England, carrying with them stories and traditions from long ago. His mother, Martha Woodruff Redford, came from Austin, Texas, while his father, Charles Robert Redford Sr., earned a living as an accountant. Alongside them, Robert also had a half-brother named William from his father's earlier marriage. The family made their home in Van Nuys, California, while his father worked in El Segundo. Life in his early years was not always easy. As a young boy in Los Angeles, Robert was struck by polio during a time when medical science had not yet created a vaccine. The illness forced him to stay in bed for weeks, leaving him weak and restless. Unlike many children of that period, he was fortunate not to need an iron lung. Slowly, his body found the strength to fight back, and with time, he regained his health. When his energy finally returned, his mother rewarded his courage by taking him on a trip that would remain etched in his heart. Together, they traveled to Yosemite National Park, where the breathtaking view of the valley unfolded before him as they came through a tunnel. Towering cliffs and waterfalls stood in front of him, and the sheer beauty of nature pressed itself into his memory. That single moment planted a spark inside him, one that grew into a lasting love for the outdoors. School, however, never gave him the same sense of fun. At Van Nuys High School, he crossed paths with future baseball star Don Drysdale, but Robert felt little connection with academics. He struggled with studies and often felt out of place among students who seemed to fit easily into the system. Instead, he turned towards sports and art, searching for energy and ideas outside the classroom. At the Los Angeles Tennis Club, he picked up a racket and even helped Pancho Gonzalez warm up before matches, chasing the thrill of movement rather than the structure of lessons. During high school, he often drifted into groups that pushed boundaries. On the day of graduation, while most students sat in proud rows, Robert chose to sit at the back of the auditorium with a copy of Mad magazine in his hands, lost in its pages rather than in the ceremony unfolding on stage. After finishing school in 1954, he stepped into the next chapter of his life at the University of Colorado in Boulder. There, he joined the Kappa Sigma fraternity and worked to make ends meet. To earn money, he took a job at a local spot called The Sink, a restaurant and bar known for its lively crowds. His presence there left such a mark that his likeness was later painted into a mural on its wall. Still, his time at the university did not settle into steady progress. Robert began to drink heavily, and this habit soon broke down the support he had relied on. A partial scholarship that had been helping him slipped out of reach. Without it, his place at the university grew weaker until finally he was expelled. Facing an uncertain future, he refused to sink into despair. Instead, he looked outward and decided to step into the wider world. With whatever savings he could gather, Robert set off across Europe. He wandered through France, Spain, and Italy, living simply and taking in the rhythm of life in each place. At 19, he had managed to save enough to spend 1 year traveling across the continent. Everywhere he went, he carried his sketchbook and paints, filling them with drawings and colors that caught his eye. His dream was to become a painter, and this journey helped him grow sharper in his craft. The streets, the landscapes, and the people of Europe shaped his sense of art and also broadened his view of politics, society, and culture. After this year of discovery, Robert returned to the United States with his passion for art still burning. He enrolled at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, where he studied painting more seriously. Here, he also experimented with animation, exploring how movement and images could blend together. With his brushes and pencils, he pushed himself forward, determined to build a life around creativity. Yet even as he built up his skills on canvas, another path began to rise before him. In the late 1950s, his curiosity turned toward the stage. The world of acting started to draw him in, pulling him away from paints and sketches. Wanting to explore this new direction, he joined the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan. He trained, practiced, and slowly learned to shape his presence on stage. In 1959, he graduated, marking the beginning of a new journey. Although drawing and painting never left his life, the spark of acting grew stronger. It carried him into auditions, into new roles, and into opportunities that opened doors far beyond what he had first imagined. His early struggles, his love for nature, his energy, and his search for meaning all came together to shape the man he was becoming. What began as a boy's struggle with academics and a love for sketching the world around him had turned into the foundation for a career that would soon reach extraordinary heights, a legacy of hope for the future. Robert Redford's life stretched far beyond the usual measure of years, and his story carried a significance that touched many corners of the world. He was not only an actor whose face lit up the screen, but also a man who used his place in life to reach out, lift others up, and fight for what he believed mattered most. His years in the public eye were not only about his fame, but also about what he built, what he defended, and what he handed over to others who came after him. From the beginning, Redford understood that his influence could be used to help young artists who struggled to find their place. He stepped forward when many were ignored and carved out space for them to speak through film. At the same time, he put his energy into protecting the natural world, refusing to let it be stripped away by those who chased profit. For him, cinema was more than entertainment. It was a tool to reveal the American spirit, showing its strengths, its failures, and its ongoing fight to move forward. He entered Hollywood during a time when film was changing, and he became a figure who shaped those changes. As an actor, he chose his roles with care, stepping into parts that often reflected society's struggles with corruption, politics, and truth. His screen presence always carried honesty. He showed that integrity could still stand firm even when surrounded by lies and greed. His ability to bring such characters to life made him more than just a star. He became a mirror that reflected the times people were living through. But Redford did not stop at acting. He moved behind the camera as both director and producer, shaping films with the same focus he brought to his performances. He knew that storytelling was not only about what appeared in front of the camera, but also about the vision and choices made behind it. He expanded his influence by building paths for others, giving filmmakers a chance to rise when doors might have stayed closed for them. This dream became clear in 1981 when he founded the Sundance Institute. His idea was to give young, independent filmmakers a chance to show their work and develop their craft. 4 years later, he built upon this vision by reshaping the United States Film and Video Festival into what soon became the Sundance Film Festival. This single act changed the shape of cinema. It gave independent voices a powerful stage, and many careers were born because Redford decided to create space where none existed before. Yet, even when listing his achievements, one still cannot fully capture the force of his presence. Watching him on screen carried an energy that was almost impossible to put into words. In films like The Sting, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and All Is Lost, he seemed to hold audiences in place. Every look, every gesture carried meaning. He had the rare power to pull people closer without needing to say much. His performances stayed with viewers long after the final scene had ended. Away from the screen, he did not turn away from the world's struggles. He spoke out against those who placed greed above the well-being of the planet. The environment was not just a cause for him. It was something deeply personal, something to be protected at all costs. He urged people to think beyond themselves, to act with generosity when selfishness seemed easier, and to protect what could so easily be destroyed. He understood that industry and profit would always try to consume the natural world, and he stood against that pull. For Redford, hope was never a distant dream. It was a practical tool, something to hold on to and use to move forward. He believed that despair only fed the very forces that needed to be resisted. This belief shaped his choices, guiding how he used his fame and where he put his energy. He never pulled back when it came to supporting causes that others might have avoided. Instead, he stepped into those battles, whether they were about protecting the environment, defending independent voices, or pushing film to show society's truths. His influence stretched far beyond the cinema. He showed that art could connect directly to the challenges of society, that stories could shape culture and not just reflect it. His career was built on constant growth and reinvention. From a young actor struggling for roles, he grew into a legend whose vision reached across generations. Over nearly 9 decades, Redford lived in a way that filled every year with meaning. His presence cannot be measured only by awards or films. He became a figure who carried both artistry and responsibility. He never stopped pushing himself to go further, never settling on what he had already done. He lived as if he carried several lives within one. Now, with his passing at the age of 89, the space he leaves behind feels vast. Yet, his art remains, his films still speak, and his work in building independent cinema continues to grow. The ideas he lived by, holding on to hope, protecting what matters, and creating chances for those who might be overlooked, will not fade. Robert Redford showed through his life that one person, through dedication and vision, could shape stories, culture, and the very way people see the world. He gave more than entertainment. He gave direction, opportunities, and the reminder that even in a world filled with division, one life lived with purpose could shift the path of many. His story now stands as part of the larger story of cinema, of art, and of the fight to protect both humanity and nature. Fall of a Fighter. On September 16, 2025, Robert Redford's life came to an end while he was resting at his home in Sundance, Utah. He was 89 years old. He passed away during his sleep, leaving behind an image of peace that comforted those closest to him. His longtime publicist confirmed the news, explaining that his departure happened naturally inside the home where he had spent his later years surrounded by family. No specific illness was announced. The focus remained on the end of a long and remarkable journey. Redford's family stood firmly by his side through every stage of his life. His two daughters, Shauna and Amy, carried forward his name and memory, holding on to the love and guidance he had given them. His wife, Sybil Sagars Redford, remained with him until the very end. At 68, she had built a career on her own terms, but always stayed close to her husband, supporting his long path in both film and activism. Their life together brought together art, passion, and a shared belief in causes larger than themselves. News of Redford's passing spread quickly to every corner of the globe. Fans and admirers used social media to pour out their feelings, writing about how his work had touched their lives. Across Hollywood, those who had once shared a set with him stepped forward to remember the way he had influenced them. The memories painted a portrait not only of a brilliant actor, but of a man who worked with generosity and drive. Many recalled him as a figure of creativity and a collaborator who brought out the best in others. His career stretched across more than 60 years, and during that vast span of time, Redford shaped the industry from different sides. He was not only a leading actor, but also a gifted director and a determined producer. He worked his way into every part of the craft, pulling together stories that carried weight and artistry. Beyond the screen, he raised his voice for causes that mattered to him. He stepped into activism with the same commitment he gave to film, using his influence to push important conversations out into the world. The tributes that came after his passing reflected this layered influence, recognizing that he stood as both an artist and a public figure who cared deeply about society. By the time of his passing, Redford's fortune was estimated at around $200 million. His wealth did not come only from his acting and directing, but also from ventures that showed his entrepreneurial spirit. Perhaps the most enduring example of this was the creation of the Sundance Film Festival. What began as a simple idea to bring attention to independent voices in cinema grew into one of the most respected festivals in the world. Sundance opened the doors for countless filmmakers, allowing new voices to step up and reshape the future of cinema. Throughout his career, honors and awards followed him, showing how much the industry recognized his talent. In 2002, he received the Academy Award for Lifetime Achievement, honoring decades of dedication to storytelling. Years before that, in 1980, he had earned acclaim as a director with Ordinary People, a film that displayed his sharp skill behind the camera. His influence stretched beyond art into environmental advocacy, where he stepped forward to call attention to the struggles of the planet. The obituaries that followed his passing attempted to capture the full scale of his life. Variety referred to him as a guiding force in independent film, emphasizing the way he stood behind new talent. The Guardian looked back at the 1970s and described how he helped define American cinema during that time, bridging the gap between Hollywood's new wave and mainstream storytelling. The Los Angeles Times placed him among the great icons of his generation, a man whose image and work shaped not only films, but also the culture around them. Redford's demise marked more than the loss of a beloved actor. It closed a chapter in the history of cinema that had been built over decades of dedication. He was never just someone who performed on screen. He was someone who lifted up others, who built platforms for new artists, and who stepped into larger battles for art and the environment. His work carried on across generations, shaping both films and social causes in ways that continue to matter. Through the years, he managed to hold together the worlds of acting, directing, producing, and activism, building a body of work that left its mark in many different places. His passing in Sundance, the very place that gave its name to the festival he created, carried a sense of completion. He had given his life to art and causes that reached beyond himself. As the news of his departure moved across the world, it reminded people of the extraordinary impact one man could have. What do you think about the kind of relationship Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford built? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.